The scream was swallowed by the sudden, impossibly vast silence. One moment, the city hummed with the familiar symphony of metropolis. Sirens wailing, taxis blaring, the distant hum of flight. The next, a profound, unearthly quiet descended. Not as an absence of sound, but as an oppressive presence, pressing in, stealing breath. Colonel Sanders, his hand still reaching for the comms console in the watchtower's main observation deck, froze. The tactical display, usually a vibrant tapestry of global threats and allied positions, had flatlined. Every single green dot, every flickering yellow alert, had vanished. Sanders wasn't a man given to panic. Not after 2 decades serving the clandestine operations that kept the world safe. But the sight before him, through the panoramic viewport that usually offered a breathtaking view of Earth, made a cold, dread bloom in his gut. Where North America had been, a swirling maelstrom of iridescent energy now pulsed. It wasn't a cloud, or a storm, or any natural phenomenon known to man. It was a wound, an impossible tear in the fabric of reality itself, shimmering with hues no human eye should ever see. From its epicenter, tendrils of this strange light snaked outward, consuming continents, turning oceans into fractured mosaics of light and shadow. "Status report," Sanders barked, his voice unnaturally loud in the silence. No response. His eyes darted to the empty command chairs around him. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. They had been here moments ago, strategizing, debating the logistics of a minor geopolitical flare-up in Markovia. Now only the echoes of their absent presence remained. He grabbed the emergency comm unit, slamming the activate button. Nothing but static, thick and hissing like a dying serpent. His gaze snapped back to the viewport. The maelstrom expanded, impossibly fast, its unnatural glow beginning to reflect off the polished surfaces of the watchtower. Through the swirling chaos, he thought he saw it, a fleeting glimpse, a distortion in the light. Something small, too small to matter, surely. But the sheer scale of the destruction defied logic, defied reason, defied everything he knew about the universe. His breath hitched. This wasn't an attack. This was an unmaking. Chapter. Hook. Describe the opening 2 to 3 lines designed to immediately grab the audience's attention. Action. Sensory detail or immediate conflict. The screen was swallowed by the sudden, impossibly vast silence. Colonel Sanders, hand still reaching for the comms console, froze. The tactical display, usually a vibrant tapestry of global threats, had flatlined. B. Core action conflict. Detailed summary of the main sequence of events, e.g., a tactical retreat, a confrontation with a new authority, a desperate siege. Colonel Sanders, a seasoned military strategist and now the unwitting sole survivor on the watchtower, witnesses the DC universe being consumed by a reality-bending phenomenon originating from a single, impossibly small point. His initial attempts to contact the Justice League or any Earth-based command centers fail, confirming the catastrophic scale of the event. As the watchtower itself begins to shudder and glow with the encroaching energy, he scrambles to activate a last resort escape pod, all while wrestling with the overwhelming horror of what he's seeing. He observes the Ant-Man anomaly, a seemingly minuscule point of origin, causing the universe's unraveling. His internal monologue reveals his grim understanding that whatever this is, it isn't an enemy to fight, but a fundamental collapse. See dialogue. Focus. Note the key. Concise dialogue exchange that defines this chapter. Tactical order, a moment of character defiance, or a lore reveal. Status report. Sanders barked, his voice unnaturally loud in the silence. No response. He slammed the emergency comm unit. Nothing but static. D. Suspense tactic. Identify the method used to delay or heighten tension, e.g., internal communication, a ticking clock countdown, a high-stakes choice. The suspense is heightened by Sanders's isolation and the gradual, yet unrelenting, visual spectacle of the universe's destruction. The ticking clock is the encroaching reality tear consuming the watchtower itself. E. Cliffhanger. Describe the specific, high-stakes moment that the chapter ends on, forcing the audience to continue. Just as Sanders seals himself into the escape pod, the main viewport shatters, revealing a monstrously magnified, impossible-to-comprehend eye, or perhaps a single, unblinking lens, staring directly at him from the heart of the swirling void. before the watchtower is entirely swallowed. The watchtower shuddered, a groan of stressed metal and failing force fields. Emergency lights, stark red, pulsed, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock the absence of anything real outside. Sanders, his face a mask of grim determination, moved with practiced efficiency. Years of simulations, of drills for scenarios deemed impossible, now clicked into terrifying reality. His hands flew across the escape pod's console, fingers dancing over holographic displays that flickered wildly. Environmental seals engaged. Navigational thruster sunline. Destination anywhere, he muttered, the last word tasting like ash in his mouth. What was the point of a destination when everywhere was ceasing to exist? The watchtower's power grid groaned, lights flickering faster, threatening to die altogether. He spared another glance at the main viewport, or what was left of it. The iridescent maelstrom had grown, its chaotic beauty now pressing against the reinforced glass. Tendrils of purple and green light seeking entry. He saw it again, clearer this time. A pinprick, a speck of something utterly mundane, yet it was the epicenter of this cosmic horror. It defied reason, an ant, a single, insignificant ant, impossibly magnified, its tiny form distorted by the physics-defying energies it somehow commanded. It was impossible. It had to be. Yet the evidence was undeniable. This was no supervillain's plot. This was something else entirely. A glitch in the cosmos. A tear caused by something so small, so irrelevant. It twisted the very concept of scale into a grotesque joke. A sudden, violent tremor rocked the watchtower, throwing Sanders against the console. Alarms blared, a piercing shriek that threatened to rupture his eardrums. Hull integrity compromised. A synthesized voice screamed, a frantic echo in the collapsing station. He pushed himself upright, his head throbbing, and locked the final sequence. The pod's hatch hissed shut, sealing him in a claustrophobic cocoon of reinforced alloys and dwindling hope. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat, his eyes fixed on the forward viewport of the pod. Through its smaller, heavily shielded screen, he could still see the horrifying spectacle. The watchtower was dissolving, not exploding, but unraveling into pure light and raw energy, like a threadbare tapestry coming undone. The colors intensified, searing his retinas even through the polarized glass. And then, he saw it. From the heart of the swirling void, where North America had been, where the Earth had been, something coalesced. Not a face, not an entity, but a form. It was immense, beyond comprehension, yet it was also microscopic. A single, unblinking lens, impossibly magnified, a crystalline structure reflecting the chaotic energy. It seemed to fixate on the escape pod, a silent, all-seeing eye. The watchtower gave a final, agonizing shriek as the maelstrom swallowed it whole. Just as the pod jettisoned, a fraction of a second before the void consumed everything, the viewport before Sanders shattered. Not from impact, but from the sheer, overwhelming proximity of that impossible eye. Its gaze, cold and absolute, seemed to pierce through the pod's hull, through his very being, before he was violently thrown free, hurtling into the unknown. The void was not empty. It was a maelstrom of fractured realities, a kaleidoscopic nightmare where stars bled into nebulae and nebulae twisted into impossible geometries. Colonel Sanders, strapped tight in his escape pod, fought a rising tide of nausea as the vessel tumbled through the chaos. Outside, the shimmering vortex roared, a silent, terrifying maelstrom that defied every law of physics. He had activated the pod's sublight drive on instinct, desperate for distance. But distance from what? From everything? His comms were still dead, but the pod's internal diagnostic flickered with alarming messages. Hull integrity at 60%, power fluctuating, life support struggling. And then, a more chilling alert. Temporal distortion detected. Extreme localized space-time fluctuations. He grit his teeth. Whatever cosmic horror had devoured his universe, it hadn't simply erased it. It had twisted it, folded it, spat it out into this. He focused on the primary scanner, trying to make sense of the blips and squiggles that danced across the screen. Most were debris, what remained of planets, stars, even entire galaxies, now reduced to shimmering motes of energy. But then a stronger signal resolved itself. A large object, stable, impossibly distant yet somehow here. It wasn't one of the debris fields. It had structural integrity, a ship. His mind, trained for tactical assessment even in the face of the apocalypse, instantly processed the possibilities. An enemy vessel, a survivor, or something else entirely. He angled the pod, making a desperate course correction. Whatever lay ahead, it was his only chance. He had to know. He had to understand. He had to find answers, even if those answers meant confronting the end of all things. The silence in the pod was broken only by the hum of failing systems and the frantic beat of his own heart. The universe was gone, and he was adrift in its impossible aftermath. He had seen the impossible eye, the single magnified lens that seemed to peer into his soul. Now, he needed to find out who or what it belonged to. A. Chapter hook. The void was not empty. It was a maelstrom of fractured realities, a kaleidoscopic nightmare where stars bled into nebulae. Colonel Sanders, strapped tight in his escape pod, fought a rising tide of nausea. B. Core action conflict. Sanders' escape pod tumbles through a chaotic, reality-fractured void. He fights to maintain control and grapple with the sheer impossibility of what has transpired. His internal diagnostics indicate severe damage and extreme temporal spatial distortions. He picks up a single, stable, large energy signature, an unknown object amidst the cosmic debris, and sets a desperate course towards it, recognizing it as his only potential lead or sanctuary. His motivation is a grim determination to understand the incomprehensible destruction. C. Dialogue. Focus. His comms were still dead, but the pod's internal diagnostic flickered with alarming messages. Hull integrity at 60%, power fluctuating, life support struggling, and then a more chilling alert. Temporal distortion detected, extreme localized space-time fluctuations. D. Suspense tactic. The suspense comes from Sanders' isolation in a surreal, destructive environment and the ambiguity of the unknown signal. The temporal spatial distortions add another layer of terrifying unpredictability. E. Cliffhanger. As he finally closes in on the source of the signal, the pod's main viewport is suddenly illuminated by a blinding, sickly green light, revealing not a ship, but a colossal, impossibly intricate mechanical structure, unlike anything he has ever seen. Looming silent and inert in the void, the sickly green light pulsed, bathing the escape pod in an eerie glow. Sanders shielded his eyes, his breath catching in his throat. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure, colossal, intricate, and utterly alien. It seemed to float, disconnected from any discernible gravitational force, a metallic leviathan adrift in the shattered remnants of creation. Its surface was a tessellation of impossible angles and glowing conduits, humming with a low, resonant energy that vibrated through the pod's hull. He brought the pod closer, fighting against the currents of distorted space. The structure was undeniably artificial, yet its scale defied any known civilization. It wasn't built for travel, it was built for processing, for containment. He saw massive, hexagonal bays lining its flanks, each one glowing with the same eerie green light. And within them, impossible to discern at this distance, faint shadows moved. "What in the?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. This wasn't debris. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was deliberate. And it was connected. He felt it, a cold certainty seizing him. The same impossible geometry, the same unearthly light, the same sense of scale-defying precision that had emanated from the Ant-Man anomaly that had erased his universe. The pod's proximity alarm screamed, pulling him from his stunned contemplation. A new energy signature flared on his scanner, close by, too close. Before he could react, a jolt rocked the pod, and then another. Something had locked onto them. A tractor beam? Sanders threw the thrusters to full, trying to break free, but it was useless. The pod was pulled inexorably towards one of the hexagonal bays, a maw of green light opening to receive it. He braced for impact, his hand hovering over the emergency override, a grim resolve hardening his features. If this was a trap, he wouldn't go down without a fight. Even against a universe-destroying force, a soldier always had one last bullet, or in this case, one last desperate maneuver. A. Chapter hook. The sickly green light pulsed, bathing the escape pod in an eerie glow. Sanders shielded his eyes. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure, colossal, intricate, utterly alien. B. Core, action, conflict. Sanders approaches the massive alien structure, observing its impossible scale, and unnatural, intricate design. He realizes it's not debris, but a deliberate, functional construct. As he processes this, his escape pod is abruptly caught in an energy beam and pulled towards one of the structure's hexagonal bays. He tries to escape but is overpowered, bracing for whatever awaits him inside, his mind racing to understand the connection between this structure and the destruction he witnessed. C. Dialogue. Focus. What in the? He whispered, his voice hoarse. This wasn't debris. This wasn't a natural phenomenon. This was deliberate. D. Suspense tactic. The suspense comes from the unknown nature of the massive structure and the forced entry into it. The lack of communication and the hostile, overwhelming force that captures him heighten the tension. E. Cliffhanger. The hexagonal bay door hissed open as the pod was drawn inside, revealing a cavernous interior where shadowy, impossibly tall figures moved amidst complex machinery, their forms indistinct, but their presence undeniably menacing. The hexagonal bay door hissed open, engulfing the pod in an acrid, metallic smell. Sanders' heart hammered against his ribs. He slammed his hand against the door release. The hatch popped, and he scrambled out, his military-issue energy pistol already drawn, glowing faintly in the dim green light. The bay was vast, cavernous, far larger than it appeared from the outside. Machinery hummed, a low, guttural thrum that vibrated through the very air. Shadowy figures moved amidst the complex machinery, impossibly tall, their forms indistinct, but their presence undeniably menacing. They weren't moving quickly, more like operators going about a grim, precise task. He couldn't make out details, only their immense size and the way their multiple limbs articulated with an unsettling grace. Not human, not even remotely. "Hold your position," Sanders barked, his voice echoing in the vast space. He knew it was futile, but it was instinct, a soldier's defiance. One of the figures paused, its head, if it had one, turning slowly towards him. A beam of focused green light lanced out from where its face should be, hitting the wall beside him with a searing crackle. He dove for cover, behind a stack of glowing, crystalline conduits, the heat of the blast scorching his uniform. This wasn't a greeting. This was an extermination. He peered around the conduit, assessing his options. The bay doors had sealed shut behind him, no retreat. The figures began to advance, their movements deliberate, unhurried. He fired a series of controlled bursts, the energy bolts splashing harmlessly off their metallic hides. They didn't even flinch. He was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and utterly alone. But he wouldn't yield, not while he still drew breath. He had to understand. He had to find out what these things were and how they were connected to the universe's end. He spotted a smaller access panel glowing faintly on the far wall. A desperate chance. A. Chapter Hook. The hexagonal bay door hissed open, engulfing the pod in an acrid, metallic smell. Sanders' heart hammered against his ribs. He slammed his hand against the door release, energy pistol drawn. B. Core action. Conflict. Sanders emerges from his escape pod, weapon drawn, into the vast, alien bay. He confronts the shadowy, impossibly tall figures, attempting to assert his presence. They respond with a hostile energy blast, forcing him to take cover. He realizes his weapon is ineffective against them. Surrounded and outmatched, he assesses his bleak situation, then spots a potential escape route, a smaller access panel, and makes a desperate dash for it, prioritizing escape and gathering information over a futile fight. C. Dialogue. Focus. Hold your position, Sanders barked, his voice echoing in the vast space. A beam of focused green light lanced out from where its face should be, hitting the wall beside him with a searing crackle. D. Suspense tactic. Immediate, overwhelming threat from unknown, impervious adversaries. The tension is in Sanders' desperate fight for survival against an unstoppable force in an alien, claustrophobic environment. Cliffhanger. Sanders crashed through the access panel, tumbling into a narrow, dimly lit corridor that stretched endlessly into the darkness, only to hear the heavy thud of the towering figure's footsteps echoing ominously behind him. Impossibly close, Sanders tumbled through the access panel, hitting the metallic floor with a jarring impact. The air in the narrow corridor was stale, tasting of ozone and ancient machinery. Dim, flickering lights barely illuminated the endless tunnel, a labyrinth of pipes and conduits. The heavy thud of the towering figure's footsteps echoed ominously behind him, impossibly close. They weren't fast, but they were relentless. He pushed himself up, ignoring the throbbing pain in his shoulder, and sprinted. His pistol was useless, but he still had his wits. He had to find a control center, a data core, anything that could give him answers. He had to understand this impossible nightmare. This whole construct, this thing that had consumed his universe, it felt clinical. Not evil, not vengeful, but like a colossal cosmic apparatus carrying out its function. The corridor branched, a dizzying array of identical tunnels. He gambled, turning left, then right, trying to lose his pursuers in the metallic maze. Their footsteps seemed to multiply, a chorus of heavy thuds that suggested he was surrounded. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prick at the edges of his control. He couldn't outrun them forever. Suddenly, a faint, rhythmic thump-thump vibrated through the floor beneath his boots. It wasn't the footsteps. It was deeper, more mechanical. He followed the sound, his senses on high alert. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, a vast circular room dominated by a single, immense apparatus. It was a giant, pulsing, spherical core, glowing with the same eerie green light. Around it, smaller, intricate machines whirred and clicked, and between them, suspended in glowing stasis fields, were things. His blood ran cold. He recognized them, distorted, miniaturized, yet undeniably present. Tiny crystalline shards of what looked like the ruins of cities, microscopic, shimmering remnants of the Earth's biosphere. It was a museum of oblivion, a grotesque collection. He stared, horrified at the truth. This was not a destroyer. It was a collector. Chapter Hook. Sanders tumbled through the access panel, hitting the metallic floor with a jarring impact. The air in the narrow corridor was stale, tasting of ozone and ancient machinery. B. Core, action, conflict. Sanders navigates a labyrinthine corridor, attempting to evade the pursuing alien figures. He uses tactical evasions, but the figures seem to be closing in. He follows a new, distinct mechanical sound, leading him to a vast, central chamber. Here, he discovers a massive spherical core and, more disturbingly, smaller stasis fields containing miniaturized crystalline fragments of what appear to be cities, biospheres, and other remnants of his destroyed universe. He realizes the structure is not merely destructive, but a collector. See dialogue. Focus. They're collecting it, he whispered, his voice barely audible. His blood ran cold. He recognized them, distorted, miniaturized, yet undeniably present. D. Suspense tactic. The tension is amplified by the claustrophobic chase through the corridors, followed by the chilling reveal of the collection and the true, incomprehensible purpose of the alien structure. The idea of the universe being collected adds a horrifying new layer of existential dread. Cliffhanger. Before he could fully process the monstrous implication, a voice, deep and resonant, boomed through the chamber, not from the towering figures, but from the glowing central core itself. Specimen 7 Gamma located. Initiate analysis. Specimen 7 Gamma located. Initiate analysis. The voice wasn't spoken, not truly. It resonated directly inside Sanders's mind, a cold, clinical pronouncement that vibrated through his very bones. It emanated from the immense, pulsing spherical core in the center of the chamber. The towering figures, his pursuers, had stopped. They stood motionless, like silent sentinels, their multi-limbed forms now seeming to observe him. Their purpose shifted. Analysis. Sanders' mind reeled. Was he a specimen? Was his entire universe, the one he had just seen unmade, merely a collection of data points, a curiosity for some cosmic entity? The thought was more terrifying than any battle. It reduced everything he knew, everything he fought for, to nothing. He gripped his pistol, a futile gesture against such an incomprehensible foe. He watched as the central core intensified its glow. Energy arced between it and the smaller machines, and then a beam of concentrated green light shot forth, not at him, but at one of the crystalline shards suspended in stasis. The shard pulsed, then slowly began to morph, to expand, a tiny cityscape flickering into brief, impossible detail before shrinking back down. They were studying the remnants, categorizing them. A sudden, jarring thought struck him. The Ant-Man anomaly, the minuscule point of origin, the scale. This whole operation, this entire structure, seemed obsessed with manipulation of scale, shrinking, collecting, analyzing. It was all connected. And he, a single surviving human, was now caught in its infinitely intricate web. He had to get closer to the core. He had to understand. If this thing was analyzing his universe, perhaps it held records, data, an explanation of how this happened. His hope was a desperate, flickering ember. But it was all he had left. He moved, cautiously, keeping the inert alien figures in his peripheral vision, inching towards the pulsating heart of the chamber. Every step felt like walking into the mouth of a cosmic beast. Chapter: Hook. Specimen 7 Gamma located. Initiate analysis. The voice resonated directly inside Sanders' mind, a cold, clinical pronouncement that vibrated through his very bones. B. Core. Action. Conflict. Sanders processes the chilling realization that he is considered a specimen and his destroyed universe a subject of analysis. He observes the central core and auxiliary machines actively studying a crystalline remnant, causing it to briefly expand and reveal details of a cityscape. A chilling connection forms in his mind about the Ant-Man anomaly and this entity's apparent obsession with scale manipulation. Driven by a desperate need for answers, he decides to risk approaching the central core, believing it holds information about the catastrophic event. See dialogue. Focus. The voice wasn't spoken, not truly. It resonated directly inside Sanders' mind, a cold, clinical pronouncement that vibrated through his very bones. D. Suspense tactic. The suspense is built through the psychological horror of being categorized as a specimen and the chilling clinical nature of the entity. The focus on analysis and scale manipulation deepens the mystery of the Ant-Man connection. Cliffhanger. As Sanders got within touching distance of the massive core, a sudden blinding flash erupted from its surface, projecting a torrent of chaotic, incomprehensible images directly into his mind. A rapid-fire montage of impossibly small figures, shifting realities, and the face of a man he didn't recognize, screaming. The blinding flash erupted from the core, not outward, but directly into Sanders' mind. A torrent of chaotic, incomprehensible images flooded his consciousness, overloading his senses. He staggered back, clutching his head, a guttural cry torn from his throat. The images were a rapid-fire montage. Impossibly small figures manipulating reality with casual ease, entire cities shrinking into glass vials, universes collapsing into pinpricks of light. And then, a face, a human face, contorted in a silent scream, eyes wide with a manic terror, or perhaps a chilling ecstasy. A man he didn't recognize, yet whose presence felt profoundly significant, like a missing piece of a monstrous puzzle. The vision receded as quickly as it came, leaving him gasping, disoriented, the metallic taste of fear bitter on his tongue. The towering figures remained inert, observing. He shook his head, trying to clear the lingering echoes of the psychic assault. The man in the vision, he was somehow connected. He was the Ant-Man, not an actual ant, but a human figure linked to this scale-defying destruction. He forced himself to look at the core again, this time with a new, terrifying understanding. It wasn't just collecting, it was processing, assimilating, and that flash, that mental intrusion, felt like an attempt to integrate him, to categorize his perspective. He was not merely a specimen to be analyzed, he was a component, a data stream. This entity, whatever it was, saw the universe not as a place of life and vibrant interaction, but as a vast, intricate system of data to be catalogued, shrunk, and understood. The destruction of his reality was merely a side effect, an efficient means to an end. It was an impossible, horrifying logic. His comm unit, miraculously, crackled to life, a faint, distorted signal breaking through the impossible void. "Watchtower? Anybody?" A voice, ragged with static, desperate. It wasn't his world. It couldn't be. But it was someone else out there. Another survivor. Or perhaps another universe being caught in this colossal, cosmic trap. A fresh wave of determination surged through him. He wasn't alone. He might still be able to fight. Chapter Hook. The blinding flash erupted from the core, not outward, but directly into Sanders' mind. A torrent of chaotic, incomprehensible images flooded his consciousness. Core action, conflict. Sanders is subjected to a psychic flash from the core, experiencing a rapid-fire montage of images, reality manipulation, shrinking cities, collapsing universes, and a screaming human face, the Ant-Man. He recognizes this man as the likely source of the initial anomaly. He realizes the entity views him not just as a specimen, but as a data component. A miraculous, distorted signal crackles through his comms, indicating another survivor or a nearby universe, reigniting his resolve. See dialogue focus. His comm unit miraculously crackled to life, a faint, distorted signal breaking through the impossible void. "Watchtower? Anybody?" A voice, ragged with static, desperate, suspense tactic. The psychic assault adds a new, internal layer of threat and provides fragmented lore. The sudden, unexpected comms signal introduces a glimmer of hope and a new, immediate objective. Cliffhanger. Before he could respond to the comms signal, a new, much smaller, but intensely powerful energy signature blipped onto his internal scanner, rapidly approaching the chamber. It wasn't one of the towering figures. It was moving too fast, too erratically, and its signature felt familiar, yet alien. The small, erratic energy signature blipped violently on Sanders' wrist-mounted scanner, closing fast on the chamber. It wasn't one of the towering operators. This was different, smaller, faster, and the energy signature pulsed with a familiar yet alien resonance. It felt like a distorted echo of the very power that had unmade his world. He ignored the ghostly voice still crackling on his comms. This new threat, or perhaps this new variable, was immediate. He moved, seeking cover behind a bank of glowing data conduits, his energy pistol held ready. The towering figures in the chamber remained unmoving, their attention still fixed on the central core, or perhaps on him. They seemed indifferent to the approaching anomaly. A sudden, sharp crackle of static preceded a blinding flash of golden light from a far access point. And then, a figure materialized in the doorway. He was human, wearing a bizarre suit of red and black armor, glowing with an internal energy that mirrored the destructive power Sanders had witnessed. He was small, almost unnervingly so, yet his presence radiated an immense, unstable power. He was the man from the vision, the screaming face, the Ant-Man. The figure swept his gaze across the chamber, his eyes, visible through a clear visor, burning with a frantic intensity. He saw the collection, the glowing core, the inert alien operators. And then, his eyes locked onto Sanders. A flicker of something, recognition or alarm, crossed his face. You shouldn't be here," the Ant-Man rasped, his voice raw, distorted by the suit's internal comms, yet infused with a terrifying, unhinged authority. His hand twitched, and a localized temporal distortion rippled outward from his gauntlet, freezing one of the alien operators mid-motion, turning it into a shimmering, frozen tableau of light. This was not an ally. This was the storm itself, now contained within a human form, and he was very, very angry. Chapter hook. The small, erratic energy signature blipped violently on Sanders' wrist-mounted scanner, closing fast on the chamber. It wasn't one of the towering operators. This was different. B. Core, action, from conflict. Sanders detects a rapidly approaching, powerful energy signature. He takes cover. A human figure in a bizarre red and black suit, the Ant-Man from his vision, materializes in the chamber, radiating immense, unstable power. The Ant-Man surveys the alien collection and core, then spots Sanders, speaking with unhinged authority. He demonstrates his power by freezing one of the alien operators in a temporal distortion, confirming him as the source of the cosmic catastrophe. C. Dialogue focus. You shouldn't be here, the Ant-Man rasped, his voice raw, distorted by the suit's internal comms, yet infused with a terrifying, unhinged authority. D. Suspense tactic. The reveal of the Ant-Man and his immediate demonstration of immense, reality-bending power immediately escalates the threat. His unhinged demeanor and cryptic dialogue create intense personal suspense for Sanders. E. Cliffhanger. Before Sanders could react or even formulate a response, the Ant-Man turned his full, terrifying attention to the massive central core. A manic grin spreading across his face, and with a guttural roar, unleashed a blinding torrent of impossible energies from his gauntlets directly into its heart. The Ant-Man, a whirlwind of unstable power and manic intent, unleashed a blinding torrent of impossible energies from his gauntlets, directing them squarely into the massive central core. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of groaning metal and crackling energy. Sparks flew, systems shrieked, and the very air vibrated with the force of the assault. The core, which had just moments ago radiated cold, clinical authority now pulsed erratically, its emerald glow flickering violently, struggling against the onslaught. Sanders, blasted backward by the concussive force, landed hard against a console, his head ringing. He watched, horrified, as the Ant-Man's assault tore through the alien technology, the core's spherical surface beginning to crack and fissure under the strain. This wasn't an attempt to shut it down. This was an act of pure, destructive fury. The towering alien operators, previously inert, now began to stir. Their multi-limbed forms moved with a new, urgent speed, their glowing faces turning from the core to the Ant-Man. Energy beams, identical to the one that had almost vaporized Sanders, lanced out, converging on the red and black suited figure. But the Ant-Man merely laughed, a high-pitched, manic sound that echoed through the screaming chamber. He shifted, impossibly fast, letting the beams pass through spatial distortions, only to rematerialize behind the operators, firing his own chaotic blasts. One by one, the alien figures crumpled, their metallic forms dissolving into shimmering particles, erased from existence. You think you can just collect us? Store us away? The Ant-Man shrieked, his voice laced with a venomous rage that was utterly chilling. You think you can understand what you've done? His power intensified, the torrent of energy into the core growing fiercer, brighter. You think you can just collect us? Store us away? The Ant-Man shrieked, his voice laced with a venomous rage that was utterly chilling. You think you can understand what you've done? His power intensified, the torrent of energy into the core growing fiercer, brighter, bathing the chamber in an oscillating nightmare of green and golden light. The very air tasted of burnt ozone and screaming metal. Colonel Sanders, pressing himself against the damaged console, tried to make sense of the chaos. The core, that colossal, spherical heart of the alien collection, buckled and groaned under the relentless assault. Cracks, spiderwebbing, and glowing with trapped energy raced across its surface. The remaining towering alien operators, though still numerous, seemed hesitant, their lancing energy beams now erratic, less focused. It was as if the Ant-Man's raw, unquantifiable power was disrupting their very processing capabilities. You shattered the walls. You tore open the fabric. And for what? For a database? Ant-Man raged, his voice a distorted shriek of pain and fury. He was no longer just attacking. He was conversing with the core, a twisted, one-sided argument with an indifferent god machine. You ripped my family, my universe apart, and you expect me to just let you put the pieces in your pretty little jars. Sanders' mind raced, shattered the walls, tore open the fabric. The Ant-Man was not merely a victim. He was the catalyst. He had done something involving scale and reality that had caused the universe to unravel. And these aliens, these collectors, had come to pick up the pieces, perhaps even drawn by the very disturbance Ant-Man had caused. The Ant-Man wasn't fighting for revenge. He was fighting against the very implication of what the collectors represented, the normalization, the categorization of his cosmic crime. The core let out a deep, resonant thrum, a sound that went beyond hearing, vibrating in Sanders' chest cavity. The green light intensified, then pulsed outward, momentarily pushing back the Ant-Man's golden energies. A voice, the same cold, clinical presence that had spoken directly into Sanders' mind, now boomed through the chamber, seemingly addressing the Ant-Man. Anomaly designated. Source of catastrophic space-time fracture. Containment protocols initiated. Attempting assimilation. Assimilation! Ant-Man bellowed, his laughter short, manic. You can't assimilate what you can't comprehend. You can't contain a collapse. He roared, and the golden energy surged, coalescing into a shimmering, unstable vortex around his body. The very space around him seemed to warp, the metallic walls of the chamber blurring at the edges. Sanders knew he couldn't stay here. He was caught between a rampaging, reality-bending madman and an incomprehensible alien collection machine. He needed answers, yes, but he also needed to survive. He spotted a maintenance access hatch, smaller than the one he'd used to enter, partially obscured by the shifting light. It might lead to another section of the complex, perhaps even an exit. He began to crawl, keeping low, hoping his insignificant presence would be overlooked in the grand cosmic battle unfolding before him. As he moved, he risked another glance at the Ant-Man. The figure now seemed to ripple, expanding and contracting in size at impossible speeds, a blurring streak of red and black. He was growing larger, then smaller, then back again, the very fabric of his being unstable. This was more than just a suit. It was a manifestation of the quantum energies that had swallowed his universe. The collectors had called him source of catastrophic space-time fracture. It wasn't an ant. It was a man who had somehow become a cosmic ant, capable of shrinking and expanding reality itself. One of the larger glowing crystal shards in a stasis field near the core flickered violently. It wasn't a city any longer, but a familiar patch of blue and green, a miniature ocean swirling around a landmass. It was Earth, his Earth, or what was left of it, a captured trophy in this cosmic zoo. A wave of profound grief, sharp and sudden, washed over him. But grief was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. He had to keep moving. He had to understand. He reached the hatch, fumbling with the alien latch mechanism. It resisted, cold and unresponsive. He drew his energy pistol, no longer caring about stealth, and blasted the panel. The metallic shriek of tortured alloys was swallowed by the larger roar of Ant-Man's rampage. The hatch blew open, revealing a narrow vertical shaft. He didn't hesitate, scrambling inside and pulling the damaged panel shut behind him, plunging himself into utter darkness. He activated his suit's internal light, a dim beam cutting through the gloom. The shaft was a service conduit, a vertical access route laced with pipes and power lines. He began to descend, using the rough-hewn rungs embedded in the wall. The cacophony of the battle above slowly faded, replaced by the hum of the structure's vast, unseen machinery. As he climbed down, the emergency comm unit on his wrist crackled again, clearer this time. Is anybody out there? Repeat, is anyone out there? This is Captain Atom. Come in, Watchtower. Any League response? Sanders froze, his hand gripping a cold pipe. Captain Atom, from his universe, a member of the Justice League. A wave of disbelief, then a surge of desperate hope coursed through him. Could there be others? Had the Ant-Man's actions somehow spat out fragments of his reality, or even other survivors, into this terrifying void? He thumbed the comms activation, his voice raspy. Captain Atom, this is Colonel Sanders. Watchtower is gone. The Earth, everything. It's gone. There was a moment of static-laced silence on the other end, then a strained, disbelieving voice. Sanders? Colonel Sanders? What are you talking about? Gone? We're orbiting Jupiter. The Jovian moon conflict, remember? Sanders leaned his head against the cold metal. Jovian moon conflict? No, Captain. I watched North America, the planet, unravel, consumed by some impossible energy. We're not in our universe anymore. I'm on some alien collection facility, and the source of it all, a man I'm calling the Ant-Man, he's here. He's attacking the core. An alien what? Sanders, this isn't making any sense. We just received a distress call from a Thanagarian scout ship. Reality is stable. I'm looking at Jupiter right now. Captain Atom's voice was firm, but a hint of bewildered doubt crept into his tone. Captain, listen to me. Sanders pressed, urgency in his voice. Whatever you're seeing, it's not real, or it's a different real. I saw it. I saw everything end. I saw an eye, a colossal lens staring at me as the watchtower was swallowed. And the source? This Ant-Man, he's human, but he has the power to warp reality, to shrink and expand it beyond comprehension. He's the one who broke everything. And these aliens, they're collecting the fragments. A long pause. Then Captain Atom's voice, lower now, tinged with a new, chilling concern. Sanders, if this isn't a prank, then what are you implying? That we're one of the fragments? That this isn't real? I don't know, Captain, Sanders admitted, feeling a cold dread tighten in his stomach. But if you can hear me, if this signal is somehow reaching across whatever impossible chasm separates us, then there's a connection, a ripple effect. And if you're seeing your Jupiter, but I'm seeing this, then it means whatever Ant-Man did, it didn't just destroy one universe, it shattered the very concept of a universe. Another voice, sharper, more analytical, broke in. Sanders, this is Batman. We've been trying to raise the watchtower for the last hour. All comms failed. Your signal is heavily distorted, but it's the only one we've received. What exactly are you proposing, Batman? A familiar anchor in the storm of the impossible. Sanders felt a faint surge of reassurance, quickly tempered by the enormity of what he had to explain. Batman, I witnessed the end of our universe. The entire DC universe gone, wiped clean by an event originating from a single point. A human-level entity now calling himself the Ant-Man, who has the power to manipulate scale on a cosmic level. I escaped in a pod and landed in what appears to be an alien collection facility, housing fragments of shattered realities. The Ant-Man is here, attacking the central core, and he's incredibly powerful, incredibly unstable. A collection facility for shattered realities? Batman's voice was unusually quiet, a hint of his own internal processing evident. And this Ant-Man, what is his motivation? Does he understand the scope of his actions? Motivation seems to be pure rage, Batman, Sanders replied, his mind racing, trying to relay the most critical information concisely. He seems to have accidentally broken reality, and now he's furious these aliens are trying to collect the pieces. He's telling them they can't comprehend what he's done. He believes they shattered the walls of reality. The walls, the source wall? Batman murmured, a new note of grim understanding in his tone. The barrier, at the edge of the known universe, containing the primordial energies of creation itself. If he shattered that, I don't know about a source wall, Batman, but something fundamental broke, Sanders interjected. He's a man with the power of an ant, in the most terrifying sense of the word. He can make anything vast, anything small, to impossible degrees. And he's doing it now, up there in that chamber, against these alien collectors. Are these collectors hostile? Captain Atom asked. They tried to vaporize me for being a specimen, Sanders said dryly. But their primary focus right now is containment and assimilation of Ant-Man. They seem to view him as a data anomaly, a fracture they need to analyze and categorize. Categorize the unquantifiable, Batman mused. A desperate attempt at imposing order on chaos. Sanders, what is your current location within this facility? Can you observe the Ant-Man's current state and the core's integrity? I'm in a vertical service shaft, descending, Sanders replied. The battle is raging above me. The core was cracking, and Ant-Man was expanding and contracting, distorting space itself. He's incredibly dangerous, Batman. This isn't a fight he can be reasoned out of. Perhaps not. But we need more information. If you can reach an observation point, gather any data you can on the facility's capabilities, the Ant-Man's powers, and the nature of these collectors, Batman commanded, his voice regaining its usual clipped, strategic tone. Captain Atom, maintain a clear channel. Sanders, we'll try to boost your signal, but with this much distortion, it's a miracle we're talking at all. Understood, Batman, Sanders said, a cold resolve settling in. He was no longer just a survivor. He was now the advanced scout, the sole witness to a cosmic apocalypse. He continued his descent, the hum of alien machinery growing louder, the sense of incomprehensible scale pressing in on him. The shaft opened into another horizontal corridor, this one wider, cleaner, and illuminated by a soft, pulsating blue light. This felt less like a service conduit and more like a main thoroughfare. The walls here were polished metal, reflecting his weary image back at him. As he moved, he noticed that the blue light emanated from intricate patterns etched into the floor and ceiling. Like circuit boards writ large, he kept his pistol ready, moving with practiced stealth, hugging the walls. The corridor stretched endlessly, curving gently to the right. He listened intently, but the silence here was deeper, more profound than in the service shaft, broken only by the distant, rhythmic thump-thump-thump that suggested another massive, internal mechanism. Suddenly, a disturbance in the blue light ahead. A shimmer, a distortion, as if the air itself were rippling. Sanders dropped into a crouch, peering around a corner. A figure emerged from the shimmering air. It wasn't one of the towering alien operators. This was smaller, almost human-sized, though its proportions were unsettlingly slender and elongated. Its skin was metallic, a burnished silver, and its head was a featureless ovoid, save for a single, large, multifaceted eye that glowed with the same unsettling green as the core. It wore no clothes, only intricate, glowing circuits etched into its metallic form. It moved with a silent, gliding grace, utterly alien. It was holding something, a small, crystalline shard, identical to the ones he'd seen in the collection bay. But this one pulsed with a faint, internal light, like a trapped star. The creature paused, its multifaceted eye sweeping the corridor. It was searching. Sanders held his breath, pressing himself further into the shadows. He had been so focused on the Ant-Man and the larger operators that he hadn't considered other types of entities within this impossible structure. The metallic figure continued its patrol, its movements slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. As it passed, Sanders noticed something else. A faint trail of shimmering energy lingered in its wake, coalescing for a moment before dissipating. This creature was somehow interacting with the fabric of this strange reality, perhaps even drawing energy from it. He needed to get past it. He needed to find a control room, a terminal, anything that could offer a clearer picture of this place. The comms link to Batman and Captain Atom was a lifeline, but he needed more than fragmented information. He needed direct intel. He waited until the silver figure had rounded the next bend, its faint trail of energy fading from view. Then he moved, quick and silent, following its path. He kept a healthy distance, his heart pounding in his chest. This was a reconnaissance mission now. Survival and information. The corridor eventually led to a much larger space, a colossal hangar-like bay, vastly different from the collection chamber. This area was filled with strange angular vehicles, like sleek predatory fish, shimmering with latent power. They were clearly designed for space travel, but of a kind utterly alien to anything humanity had ever conceived. And surrounding them, dwarfing them even, were immense open hexagonal bays, similar to the one his escape pod had been drawn into. But these were active, opening and closing with slow, ponderous motions. He saw the silver-skinned figures here too, moving with purpose, guiding the sleek vehicles. They seemed to be launching or retrieving them, but launching them where, and retrieving them from where? He found a secluded vantage point, a raised platform partially shielded by a series of glowing energy conduits. From there, he could observe without being seen. He pulled out a pair of high-magnification binoculars from his utility belt, a piece of old-school equipment that seemed comically out of place in this hyper-advanced alien facility. Through the lenses, he focused on one of the vehicles being prepared for launch. As its bay door opened, he saw it. Beyond the shimmering field of green energy that seemed to form the bay's threshold was not the void, not the chaotic maelstrom he'd traversed earlier. It was a star field, a pristine, vibrant field of stars, nebulae, and distant galaxies, utterly whole and untouched. His breath hitched. He spun the binoculars, searching. Another bay opened, revealing a similar scene. Another universe, not shattered, not collected. These ships weren't scavenging for fragments of dead realities. They were traveling to living ones. A chilling thought coalesced in his mind. The Ant-Man had shattered his universe. These aliens, the collectors, were gathering the pieces. But these ships, they were going to other universes. What if Ant-Man hadn't just accidentally shattered his universe? What if he had accidentally broken the barrier between universes? And what if these collectors weren't just cataloging the damage, but actively engaged in something far more insidious? Something that required travel to other realities? He scanned the hangar, his gaze drawn to a cluster of the silver figures gathered around a particularly large console. He focused his binoculars. One of them, slightly taller than the others, seemed to be giving orders, its multifaceted eye glowing brighter. It was projecting a holographic display, a complex star map that pulsed with various colored markers. As he watched, a new marker appeared, a bright red blip, not far from a familiar constellation. A constellation he knew, the Milky Way, his Milky Way, or at least a version of it. The red blip pulsed, growing larger, surrounded by a faint, golden halo. He zoomed in further, trying to decipher the alien script on the console. It was a complex array of symbols beyond his comprehension, but the holographic display was more intuitive. The red blip was an anomaly, a disturbance, and the golden halo, it was unmistakably similar to the energy signature of the Ant-Man. The implication hit him with the force of a physical blow. The Ant-Man's reality-shattering power wasn't localized to his initial universe. It was echoing, rippling, creating disturbances across the multiverse. And these alien collectors, they were tracking those disturbances. They were not just cleaning up a mess, they were responding to an opportunity. He activated his comms again, his voice strained with the new, terrifying revelation. "Batman, Captain Atom, are you still there? Sanders, we're here. Signal holding. What have you found?" Batman's voice crackled, sharp with anticipation. "I'm in what looks like a launch bay, Batman," Sanders explained, trying to keep his voice level despite the terror churning in his gut. "These aliens, the Silver Ones, they're launching ships. And they're not going into the void. They're going into other universes, living universes." A stunned silence on the comms. Then Captain Atom's voice, a horrified whisper. "Other living universes? Are you saying they're traveling to other realities?" "Yes, and I just saw a holographic map. It's tracking anomalies, disturbances." Sanders pressed on, his eyes still glued to the pulsing red blip on the alien console. "There's a new one, a rapidly growing one. It's near a galaxy that looks like our Milky Way. And the energy signature, the halo around it, it looks like the Ant-Man's power. His original breach, it didn't just destroy our universe, Batman. It tore open the multiverse. These collectors are tracking the ripples." "Tracking the ripples," Batman repeated, his voice dangerously low. "So they're not just scavengers. They're exploiters." "Or something worse," Sanders added, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. "They're not just observing. The map shows target acquisition, designation markers. The ships are being dispatched to these new anomaly points. What if they're not just collecting fragments? What if they're going into these other universes to do something, to initiate their own collection? Harvesting," Captain Atom breathed, the single word hanging heavy in the air. "It's possible," Sanders confirmed, the horrifying scenario playing out in his mind. The Ant-Man's raw, uncontrollable power had punched holes in the fabric of existence. And these aliens, with their cold, clinical efficiency, were moving in to capitalize on the chaos. They were cosmic predators, drawn to the scent of a dying or fractured reality. And his own universe had merely been the first casualty, the bellwether of a multiversal catastrophe. "Batman, Captain, if this is true, then your universe, our universe. The one you're in now, it could be next," Sanders warned. "The red blip, the new anomaly, it's approaching your sector. Whatever Ant-Man did, it's affecting your reality. This isn't just about my lost universe anymore. This is about all of them." "Understood, Sanders." Batman's voice was grim. "This changes everything. We need to prepare for an extra-dimensional incursion. Captain Atom, gather the League. Brief them on Sanders' findings, however unbelievable they may sound. Emphasize the Ant-Man's power signature and the Collector's apparent intent. We need to find the source of this new anomaly, contain it, and repel any incoming alien forces. But how, Batman?" Captain Atom's voice was laced with desperation. "If these things can travel between realities, if they can harvest universes, what hope do we have?" "Hope?" Batman retorted, his voice steeling. "We always have hope, Captain. But more importantly, we have a witness. Sanders, is there any way for you to disable those launch bays? To prevent them from deploying more ships?" Sanders looked out at the vast hangar bay, at the dozens of sleek alien vessels, at the silver-skinned figures moving with methodical precision. The consoles were complex, the technology utterly beyond his understanding. But he was a soldier. He understood sabotage. "I can try, Batman," he said, his eyes narrowing. "But these creatures are strong, and I'm just one man. My pistol is useless against the larger operators. We understand the risks, Sanders. But any delay you can cause could buy us precious time," Batman urged. "We need to consolidate our defenses, find a way to stabilize the multiversal breaches. Every minute counts." "And what about the Ant-Man, Batman?" Sanders asked. remembering the rage-filled figure still rampaging in the core chamber above. He's the source of all this. Can we even help him? Or stop him? That remains to be seen, Batman admitted. Right now, our priority is to protect our own reality from these collectors. If the Ant-Man is a consequence of the breaches, not their controller, then dealing with him may require a different approach. Focus on the launch bays, Sanders. We'll be in touch. Keep that channel open as long as possible. The comms went silent, leaving Sanders alone once more in the echoing alien hangar, the hum of the star-traveling ships filling the vast space. He looked at the vast array of alien consoles, the intricate technology, then at his own two hands, rough and calloused from decades of military service. He was a human, a simple soldier, thrust into a cosmic war beyond comprehension. But he had a mission. He had an objective. He began to move, circling the perimeter of the hangar, looking for any weakness, any vulnerability. He needed to find a central power conduit, a structural support, anything that a human could understand and exploit. He wasn't a god, he wasn't a hero with superpowers, but he was resourceful. And he was angry for his lost universe, angry for the universe that Batman and Captain Atom were trying to protect. He found it, hidden behind a stack of energy cells, a massive conduit, pulsating with green light, thicker than his own body. It was clearly a main power line, feeding energy to the entire bay, but it was heavily shielded, encased in a shimmering force field. He couldn't just blast it, he needed a way to disable the field first. As he pondered his next move, a sudden, blinding flash erupted from the direction of the core chamber, followed by a bone-jarring tremor that shook the entire facility. Alarms blared, not just in the hangar, but reverberating through the entire structure. The blue lights in the corridor flickered violently, some dying altogether, plunging sections into shadow. The silver-skinned figures in the hangar paused, their multifaceted eyes turning towards the source of the disturbance. What was that, Sanders? Batman's voice crackled through the comms, urgency now palpable. I don't know, Batman, but it felt catastrophic, Sanders replied, his heart pounding. The Ant-Man's assault on the core had escalated. Something just blew, or fractured significantly. On the holographic map at the alien console, the pulsing red blip intensified, now surrounded by a chaotic maelstrom of golden energy. It was no longer just approaching the Milky Way, it was converging on it. And beneath the red blip, a new image began to resolve, a faint, ghostly outline. It was a familiar shape, the Earth. The Ant-Man's powers, uncontrolled and unbound, were now directly impacting Batman's reality. The cosmic breach was no longer distant. It was here. The threat was imminent. One of the silver-skinned figures, the taller one that seemed to be in charge, barked a series of alien commands. The remaining ships in the hangar, previously still, now roared to life, their engines spooling up with a high-pitched whine. The hexagonal bay doors began to open with greater speed, revealing the untouched starfields beyond. The collectors were accelerating their deployment, not just tracking the anomaly, but preparing to move on it. Sanders knew he had to act, and fast. He couldn't disable the conduit from a distance. He would have to get inside the force field. He needed a distraction, something to draw away the silver figures, something to buy him a few precious seconds. He looked around the hangar, his eyes scanning for anything he could use. His gaze landed on a stack of volatile-looking energy cells, pulsing with a deep internal hum. They were marked with warning symbols, even in alien script that suggested extreme instability. A desperate, dangerous idea began to form in his mind. If he could overload one of those, the comms crackled again, Batman's voice grim. Sanders, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations at the edge of our system. Something is coming through. Multiple signatures. These collectors are on approach. We're preparing for battle, but we're blind to their exact capabilities. I see them, Batman, Sanders replied, his voice tight. They're launching. I'm trying to stop them. There's a main power conduit here. I need to get to it. Be careful, Sanders, Batman warned. Do what you can. We'll handle them on this side. If the Ant-Man created this whole mess, perhaps he holds the key to ending it. But first, we fight to survive. Sanders cut the comms, knowing he was on his own. He was a soldier, not a god, but he had a purpose. He moved towards the stack of energy cells, his plan reckless, desperate, but his only option. He had to cause enough chaos to disable that force field and get to the conduit. This wasn't just a fight for his own survival anymore. It was a fight for everyone's survival. He crept towards the energy cells, his energy pistol held ready. He had to aim for the weakest point, overload its containment. He knew this would cause a localized explosion, but hopefully not a chain reaction that would destroy the entire facility, and him along with it. A calculated risk. As he got closer, one of the silver-skinned figures turned its head, its multifaceted eye fixing on him. It had seen him. "Freeze!" Sanders barked, a futile command in an alien language, but it was instinct. He squeezed the trigger, sending a concentrated blast of energy at the creature. It deflected harmlessly off its metallic skin, but it paused, momentarily surprised. That was all the opening Sanders needed. He turned, firing a series of rapid blasts at the energy cell's exposed conduits, the weakest point he could discern. The cells hummed louder, the green light within them flickering erratically. The silver figures began to advance, their gliding movements now accelerating. "Now or never," Sanders yelled, pouring every ounce of his energy into one final sustained blast. The energy cell shrieked, an impossible sound, then detonated with a blinding flash and a thunderous roar. The explosion ripped through the hangar, throwing Sanders backward, sending him skidding across the metallic floor. The force field around the main power conduit flickered, straining against the concussive force, then died, plunging the area into temporary darkness. Shrapnel, superheated metal, and scattered energy cells flew through the air, impacting the hangar walls. Several of the sleek alien ships crumpled under the blast, their internal power failing. Alarms shrieked, louder now, more frantic. The silver-skinned figures scattered, their perfectly organized movements giving way to confusion and disarray. Sanders, bruised and battered, pushed himself up, ignoring the throbbing pain. His ears rang and a metallic tang filled his mouth. He staggered towards the now unshielded power conduit, his target. He reached the colossal conduit, its surface hot and vibrating. He couldn't simply shoot it. He needed something more substantial, something to cause a critical overload. His eyes darted around, looking for anything, any tool, any piece of debris that could be used as a wedge or a lever. His gaze fell on the wreckage of one of the exploded energy cells, a jagged piece of its casing, still glowing with residual energy. Dangerous, unstable, but potentially effective. He grabbed it, the heat searing his gloved hands, and jammed it into a seam along the conduit, twisting with all his strength. A high-pitched whine erupted from the conduit, rising in crescendo. The entire facility vibrated violently, threatening to shake itself apart. Sparks flew, blue and green, arcing wildly across the hangar. The remaining alien ships began to power down, their sleek forms going dark. The hexagonal bay doors, caught mid-open, shuddered, then seized, refusing to move. He had done it. He had cut off the power. No more ships would be launched, at least for now. But the silence that followed the conduit's shriek was short-lived. A new sound, far more terrifying, began to resonate through the facility. A deep, guttural roar that wasn't alien, wasn't mechanical. It was primal. It was human. The Ant-Man. He was no longer in the core chamber. He was here. Sanders turned, his pistol rising. The Ant-Man stood at the entrance to the hangar, illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. His red and black suit now cracked and scarred, glowing with an even more unstable, furious golden energy. He had grown. He was no longer human-sized. He was colossal, easily 30 feet tall, his head brushing the hangar ceiling. His eyes, burning through the visor, were fixed on Sanders. You stopped them," Ant-Man's voice boomed, raw and distorted by his immense size, shaking the very foundations of the facility. "You think you can stop me?" Sanders stood his ground, a tiny figure against a rampaging giant. He was out of bullets, out of options, but not out of defiance. "You tore apart my universe!" he yelled, his voice a desperate, puny sound against the Ant-Man's roar. "You broke everything, and now you're coming for another one?" Ant-Man let out a guttural scream, a sound of pure agony and rage. "They started it. They wanted to collect. They wanted to understand. You can't understand. You can't contain." He took a lumbering step forward, the ground trembling under his weight. "They wanted to put me in a box, but I am the box. I am the collapse, and you are just another piece to be swept away." The air crackled around the Ant-Man, distorting the light, warping the metallic walls. His golden energy intensified, forming a swirling vortex that seemed to draw in the very fabric of space. He was going to use his power, and Sanders, a single human, stood directly in his path. This was not a fight he could win. This was not a tactical problem to be solved. This was the end. Again, But Sanders had faced the end before, in the Watchtower, as his universe unmade itself. He wouldn't cower. He would stand. And if this was truly the end, he would face it like a soldier. "Batman, Captain Atom," he whispered into the dead comms, a final message into the abyss. "He's here. He's huge. And he's coming for me. Stop him. Save your world." The Ant-Man, a towering colossus of raw, uncontrollable power, raised a fist that was now the size of a small car. The air around him shimmered, then began to tear, the fabric of reality itself unraveling with a high-pitched, screaming whine. He was preparing to unleash a blast of multiversal energy, a force capable of crushing Sanders, and potentially this entire alien facility. And beyond that, if he broke free, he would unleash that same destructive fury on Batman's universe. Sanders closed his eyes for a split second, taking a deep breath. He opened them, his gaze firm, unwavering, fixed on the approaching storm. He would not break. He would not yield. Then, from the depths of the facility, a new sound, a cold, calculating thrum, resonated, a beam of concentrated green light, far more powerful than any Sanders had seen from the alien operators, lanced out, not from the hangar, but from a previously unnoticed aperture in the far wall. It struck the Ant-Man squarely in the chest, pushing him back, momentarily disrupting his golden vortex of power. Ant-Man staggered, a roar of frustrated fury escaping his lips. He spun, his immense form surprisingly agile, to face this new threat. From the aperture emerged a new figure, different from the silver-skinned patrols. This one was even taller, more imposing, its metallic body sleek and dark like polished obsidian. Its head was a single, intensely glowing green orb, not multifaceted like the others, but a singular, glowing green orb, radiating an immense, cold power. This was a collector, but a higher echelon, a leader. The obsidian-skinned collector stood silently, assessing the colossal Ant-Man. Its single green orb of an eye pulsed with an eerie light. Then a voice, devoid of all emotion, resonated directly into the minds of both Ant-Man and Sanders. Anomaly 7 Gamma, containment protocols failed, escalating to extermination protocol. "Resistance is futile!" Ant-Man roared, a sound that tore at the very fabric of the air. "Extermination? You think you can exterminate me?
I am the fracture!
I am the void. You think a little green light can stop me?" He lunged, his massive fist, now the size of a small building, aimed directly at the obsidian collector. The collector did not flinch. Instead, from its glowing green orb, it projected a complex array of energy fields, intertwining and solidifying into a shimmering, emerald cage around Ant-Man's fist. The impact shook the entire facility, but the cage held, deflecting the blow with an impossible resilience. Then, with a silent command, the cage began to contract, sparking with raw green power, attempting to constrict the Ant-Man's immense form. Ant-Man shrieked, a sound of agony mixed with pure, unadulterated fury. His golden energy pulsed outward, straining against the emerald cage. The air around him shimmered more violently, the metallic walls of the hangar beginning to buckle and distort as his uncontrolled power threatened to tear the structure apart from the inside. Sanders, still reeling from the explosion and the sight of the towering Ant-Man, found his focus returning. He watched the titanic struggle, a tiny human caught between two cosmic forces. The Ant-Man was a force of chaos, a broken man wielding unimaginable power. The Collector was cold, absolute order, attempting to contain that chaos. Neither seemed to care about the countless realities caught in the crossfire. He needed to buy time. Batman and Captain Atom were preparing, but they needed information. He glanced at the disabled launch bays, then back at the battle. The Obsidian Collector was clearly more powerful than the silver-skinned drones. Its containment field was holding, but the Ant-Man's uncontrolled reality warping was escalating. If Ant-Man fully lost control, this entire facility, and everything in it, including Sanders, would be erased. His eyes fell on the alien console where the holographic map still pulsed, showing the red blip of Ant-Man's influence rapidly approaching Batman's Milky Way. The Collector's new containment efforts seemed to be disrupting the larger map, but the threat was still clear. He had to get to that console. If he could understand more, perhaps even communicate directly with Batman, he might find a way to stabilize this madness, or at least give them a fighting chance. He began to move, keeping low, using the wreckage of the exploded ships as cover. The battle between Ant-Man and the Obsidian Collector was a dazzling, terrifying display of light and power, creating chaotic eddies of energy that swept through the hangar. He felt the residual energy crackle around him, threatening to unravel his own form. He reached the console, its alien interface flickering erratically under the strain of the battle. The holographic map was still active, showing the Ant-Man's growing influence converging on Batman's Earth. He needed to send a warning, a desperate plea for help, or at least a clearer picture of the enemy. He fumbled with his comm unit, trying to boost his signal to cut through the incredible interference. "Batman, Captain Atom, do you copy? The Ant-Man, he's fighting a primary collector. It's trying to contain him, but his power is escalating. The multiversal breach is expanding. It's almost at your world. Static, more static." He slammed the comm unit against his palm, frustration boiling. The battle was too intense, the energy output too massive. He was cut off. Then, a sudden blinding flash from the center of the hangar. The emerald cage around Ant-Man had shattered. With a primal roar, Ant-Man unleashed a wave of pure golden-white energy directly at the Obsidian Collector. The Collector, for the first time, seemed to falter. Its green orb-eye pulsed violently, then dimmed. It was hit, and it was damaged. Ant-Man let out a guttural laugh, raw and triumphant. "You can't contain me." "No one can. I'm going to make you feel what I feel. I'm going to tear apart every single universe you've ever touched." The giant Ant-Man began to expand further, his body blurring, shimmering with an impossible light. He was no longer 30 feet tall. He was growing, impossibly fast, threatening to fill the entire colossal hangar. The walls groaned, the floor buckled. Reality itself was being stretched and torn by his fury. Sanders watched, horrified. Ant-Man wasn't just destroying, he was becoming the destruction. His rage was so immense, so uncontained, that it was manifesting as a multiversal cataclysm. As Ant-Man grew, a chilling sight. He wasn't just growing in size, his form was becoming less human, more abstract. His suit began to dissolve into pure energy, his features blurring into a maelstrom of golden light. He was transforming into the very anomaly that had swallowed Sanders' universe. The magnified eye he had glimpsed from the escape pod, it was Ant-Man, fully unleashed. "You're turning into it," Sanders screamed, a futile warning. "You're becoming the Destroyer." Ant-Man paused, his immense, formless presence seeming to focus on Sanders for a moment. A voice, no longer a single human voice, but a chorus of tortured echoes resonated through Sanders' mind. They tried to put it all back, to fix it. "But you can't fix what was never meant to be broken. My universe, my family gone. And now I will make them all understand the cost." The mental assault was overwhelming. Sanders dropped to his knees, clutching his head. He understood now. Ant-Man wasn't just a catalyst. He had tried to reverse what he had done, to mend the tear, but had only amplified the chaos. The Collectors were not just exploiting, they were attempting to stabilize, albeit through means Sanders found horrifying. Suddenly, a blinding white light erupted from the wounded Obsidian Collector. It was repairing itself, regenerating at an impossible speed. Its green orb-eye pulsed with renewed intensity. It had adapted. It had learned. "Anomaly, 7 Gamma!" The Collector's voice boomed, stronger now, more resonant. Threat level, existential, initiating multiversal reversal protocol. Sub-entities activate temporal anchors. Engage Omega containment. From hidden apertures in the hangar walls, dozens of new silver-skinned figures emerged, not with weapons, but with shimmering, intricate devices that glowed with a soft blue light. They moved with a terrifying synchronization, positioning themselves around the rapidly expanding Ant-Man. Ant-Man, now a swirling vortex of golden energy, lashed out, dissolving several of the drones before they could complete their task. But more emerged, replacing them, their numbers seemingly endless. They began to deploy the blue glowing devices, planting them into the metallic floor. As each device locked into place, a pulse of blue energy shot out, forming a grid, a web of shimmering light that began to encircle the Ant-Man. This wasn't a cage. This was a net. Sanders realized what was happening. The Collectors were trying to rewind Ant-Man, to reverse his escalating power. They were attempting to re-establish the multiversal barriers he had broken, not to destroy him, but to contain the chaos he embodied. But Ant-Man's rage was too vast, his power too raw. The blue net shimmered, straining, but the golden vortex continued to grow, threatening to overwhelm it. Then, an impossible sound. From beyond the damaged hangar doors, a cacophony of explosions, of laser fire, of sonic booms. The battle had reached this facility. Batman and Captain Atom, they had arrived. Through a jagged tear in one of the hangar walls, Sanders saw it. Captain Atom, a living nuclear reactor, glowing with an impossible blue energy, tearing through a swarm of collector ships, and Batman's Batwing, surprisingly adapted with temporal shields, weaving through the alien armada, firing focused energy blasts that crippled collector vessels with surgical precision. They weren't just fighting, they were making a strategic assault on the heart of the collector's operation. Sanders. Can you hear me? Batman's voice, clear now, cut through the comms. We're here. What's the situation with the Ant-Man? Batman, it's worse than I thought. He's becoming the breach itself. The collectors are trying to reverse him, to contain him, but they're failing. Sanders yelled back, his voice hoarse. They're trying to deploy temporal anchors, a multiversal reversal protocol. Temporal anchors? Batman's voice was grim. That's incredibly risky. One miscalculation could unravel multiple realities. Sanders, we need to contain him without destabilizing everything further. Is there any way to sever his connection to this facility? To cut him off from the quantum energies he's drawing upon? Sanders' eyes darted to the immense central core in the collection chamber. Still visible through the gaping hole Ant-Man had torn in the wall. That was the heart of the collector's power. That was where the Ant-Man had been channeling his rage. And now, the collectors were using their own power to try and reverse him. The core, Batman, Sanders shouted. He was attacking the core. The collectors are now using its power against him. If we can disrupt the core, maybe it will sever both their connections, stop Ant-Man's expansion, and halt the reversal protocol. Risky, Batman replied immediately. But if the collector's protocol fails, the multiversal collapse accelerates. Sanders, can you get to the core? We'll buy you time.
I'm on it, Batman.
Sanders didn't hesitate. He was a soldier. He understood impossible missions. He scrambled back through the damaged wall, dodging stray energy blasts from the external battle. The collection chamber was a maelstrom of conflicting energies. Ant-Man, a golden hurricane, was at its center, straining against the shimmering blue net. The obsidian collector, now fully regenerated, was pouring its green energy into the core, desperately trying to maintain the reversal protocol. Sanders knew his pistol was useless. He needed to cause a catastrophic overload. He looked at the vast spherical core, pulsing with green energy, then at the shattered remnants of the crystalline universe fragments, still suspended in their stasis fields. He saw his own Earth fragment, still flickering with pale blue and green light. He needed a bigger disruption, something to truly overload the system. His gaze fell on a stack of highly volatile energy cells, identical to the one he had detonated in the hangar. But these were larger, marked with more severe warning symbols. They were connected to the core by thick, glowing conduits. He sprinted towards them, ignoring the chaos. The collectors were too focused on Ant-Man, and Ant-Man was too consumed by his rage to notice a lone, insignificant human. He reached the stack of cells. These were far more dangerous. If he detonated them, it could destroy the entire facility, and him along with it. But it was the only way to sever both connections, Ant-Man's and the collectors. It was the only way to gamble on saving Batman's universe. He drew his energy pistol, its power cells almost depleted. He aimed for the most critical junction, where the cells met the core conduit. He took a deep breath, the metallic taste of ozone filling his mouth. Sanders, what's your status? Captain Atom's voice boomed through the comms. We're taking heavy fire! The collector flagship is adapting to our attacks. Initiating final phase, Captain. Sanders roared back, pouring the last of his energy into a sustained blast. The energy cell shrieked, then detonated with a deafening roar that dwarfed even the Ant-Man's furious screams. The explosion was not merely physical. It was a cascade of pure multiversal energy, a chaotic storm of green and gold. The central core buckled, then fractured, light and shadow battling within its depths. The crystalline fragments of universes, suspended around it, shattered, dissolving into shimmering dust. Sanders' Earth fragment flickered once, a final poignant glimmer, then vanished. The green energy of the collector's reversal protocol flickered, then died. The blue net around Ant-Man dissolved, and the golden vortex of Ant-Man's expanding form suddenly contracted, violently, impossibly fast. The immense, multiversal being imploded, shrinking back down at an exponential rate, coalescing into a blinding pinprick of golden light. The entire facility groaned, shaking itself apart. Walls cracked, floors buckled, and emergency lights flared, then died. The obsidian collector, its own connection to the core severed, emitted a piercing silent shriek of pure data corruption, then dissolved into glittering particles, its complex form unraveling. Sanders was thrown violently against a wall as the core exploded fully, sending a shockwave of raw, uncontained energy through the chamber. He felt searing pain, then nothing but darkness. He awoke to silence, a deep, profound silence, but not the oppressive, stealing breath silence of the watchtower's end. This was a fragile, expectant silence. He lay on cold metallic floor, his body aching, every muscle screaming in protest. His uniform was torn, his energy pistol gone. He pushed himself up, groaning. The collection chamber was gone, replaced by a vast, smoldering crater. The alien facility was in ruins, its impossible architecture now a twisted, collapsing monument to a cosmic battle. Above him, through a gaping hole in the roof, he saw it. Not the chaotic maelstrom of fractured realities, but a pristine, impossibly vast starfield. He recognized the constellations. "The Milky Way, Sanders? Colonel Sanders, do you copy?" Batman's voice, clear now, cut through the comms. "Report, what happened? We detected a massive energy spike, then nothing." Sanders raised a trembling hand to his comm unit. "Batman, I blew the core. The Ant-Man, he imploded. The obsidian collector, it dissolved. The facility is destroyed." A moment of stunned silence from Batman. Then a sigh of relief. "Understood, Sanders. That was an extreme measure, but it worked. The multiversal breach appears to be stabilizing. The collector fleet has retreated from our system. They seem to have lost their central command." "What about the Ant-Man?" Sanders asked, his voice strained. Did he make it? We detected a faint energy signature, far away, rapidly receding from our sector." Captain Atom interjected, his voice weary but relieved. "A single human-level quantum signature. He was thrown clear, Colonel, but his power, it's been severely diminished. He's no longer a multiversal threat. He's just gone." Sanders slumped against a piece of twisted metal, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. The Ant-Man, the broken man who became a cosmic destroyer, had survived, but he was no longer a threat. His rage, his grief, had caused an unimaginable catastrophe, but in the end, it had been contained. "Sanders," Batman's voice broke through. "We're sending a rescue beacon to your coordinates. Can you hold on?" "I'll hold on, Batman," Sanders said, a faint, tired smile touching his lips. He was alive. Against all odds, he was alive. As he waited, he looked out at the vast, beautiful expanse of the Milky Way. It was whole, undamaged. The sacrifices had worked. His universe was gone, forever lost in the cosmic ledger, but perhaps, in its destruction, it had prevented the unmaking of countless others. He thought of the Watchtower, of Superman, Wonder Woman, the whole League. They were gone, but their legacy lived on, in the fight, in the stand he had made, in the universe that still spun, vibrant and alive. A faint light appeared in the distant stars, rapidly approaching. A rescue ship. Batman was coming. Colonel Sanders, a simple soldier who had witnessed the end of everything, and then helped save what was left, closed his eyes, a profound sense of peace settling over him. His war was over. His watch finally was done. He had seen the universe unravel, and he had seen the resilience of hope. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't thought possible. A quiet, profound sense of hope for the future. He would face the unknown, not as a solitary survivor, but as a bridge between the universes, a testament to what was lost and what could still be saved. He was ready for whatever came next.